So I'll get started. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. This is a clicker. Yes, it works. So, quick introduction about myself. We've got about 18 slides of content to get through, so I need to rip through these in the next 10 minutes and leave enough time for Q&A as well. But basically, that's what I'll be covering. Who am I? I'm a management consultant in semi-retirement, and to keep myself active, I'm returning to my programming roots. All the programming I ever did used to be procedural, and now I'm trying to learn Swift with iOS and watchOS. Is that better?
I might just shuffle your microphone ever so slightly, if that's okay.
Sure.
I'm going to go like that.
Okay. And to do the deep dive, I decided how could I learn some Swift? My family was going to Europe on a holiday, so I reached out to Natasha and said, what conferences are happening in Europe? She gave me a list, and I picked 2 of them, and basically bookend the start and the end of the holiday by going to those conferences. The timing was pretty poor because it happened to be, of course, coincident with the major launch of the iPhone XS and the watch. So the only chance I got to see them was actually at a duty-free at an airport on the way. The first place I went to was Logroño. If you've never heard of it, neither had I. It's in the middle of nowhere in Spain, but it happens to be on the Pilgrim's Trail from France to San Sebastian, Santiago. And it is sort of the 3rd stage where most of the pilgrims stay for the night. It also happens to be in the wine region, and there was a wine festival that weekend. So it was kind of a nice confluence of events. And the first night of the conference was when the keynote happened, and so we all went to a pub and tried to watch the keynote in the middle of drinking and talking and shouting and all the rest of it. It didn't work very well. So because of that, I actually walked out of it and went home and went back to the hotel and watched it from the hotel. This is a relatively small conference, about 50 people at the workshop, 60 people at the workshop in day 0. The rest of the conference was about 150 to 200 people. So it's a single stream of content. So I attended all of it, but I've highlighted in gold those sessions that I found particularly useful. In particular, Daniel Steinberg, who took us through on the workshop with adding series shortcuts to a sample application, so we all did that on our laptops. And then on the second day, Ellen Shapiro sort of topped it off with a standard 1-hour presentation about series shortcuts, which helped cement all that. And then on the Friday, the standout thing for me was 2 guys from Uber talking about how Uber, from a development perspective, had grown from 3 developers in a share house on the lawn coding the first app to now 500 developers. And of course the question is, why do you need 500 developers to be able to do it? And it's because they localize in 50 countries, they're doing stuff for 600 cities, they've got about 5 different products on the ride alone, they're now adding groceries, food deliveries, etc. And they just were doing an enormous amount of customization. The problem they had was they didn't change the basic structure of their app as they did that. And so over time, all the navigation and scheduling and control of all of these different variations was being done by the login controller. So about a year ago, they decided to rework the whole thing, having looked at various alternatives. And they built themselves an approach that they've called RIBS, which stands for the router, the interactor, and the builder. And that's what they've done for the Rider app, and the Rider app is now up and running in this format. They have about 350 RIBs, as they call it, behind the Rider app, and there are about, all the classes are about 300 lines of code. Unfortunately, the recording of these guys talking has not been released, and the presentation had to go through legal, and I think has been sort of watered down a bit. But it is on the website and is available for you to reach at, and that's in my notes at the end. Now, what did I enjoy the most? It was They had a lightning talk on the Friday lunchtime, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. These three guys did a talk on programming paradigms. Now this is a test, because there was an interpretive dance sequence. So I want you to look at the dance and shout out what the programming paradigm they are mimicking. No. No? Okay, no time. Factory. Well done. I should have brought a prize. It was a factory pattern, so I thought that was just fantastic. What was my biggest takeaway? Get started with Siri shortcuts now. It's easy to do. You can quickly get your app going. You have something, you define intents, you do a force click, you use some standard phrases that you identify from your app to Siri, and you're up and going. And it enables you to embed your app more tightly with your end users and their workflows. I don't need to do that, I've got this. The clicker. At the end of the tour, the 3 weeks of holidays, I went to Krakow. I had the misfortune of biting on something on the first night there, and I cracked my tooth and went, ow. And when I told my Polish dentist that this morning, she wasn't that impressed with the joke, but it really did happen. This is a much bigger conference, 500 people. It's in their 5th year. The NSSpain conference has been going for 10 years. But these guys are very professional, run by one of the major developer companies inside Poland. And they run basically 4 streams: Android stream, an iOS stream, a UX design stream, and anything and everything to do with mobile technology. So I was jumping from stream to stream, and again, the gold sort of highlights the sessions that I found particularly valuable. And on the second day, the two that I found valuable were in fact just voted this week as best presentations of the event. Now, it could just well be that one of those presenters is tuned into this live broadcast, because I shared with him the deck, and he gave me some more photographs to use. And that's Tobias Dumonk. But the reason I liked Michael Swilinski's presentation as a management consultant, his presentation was all about his company of 35 people. They have no home office. They only meet 2 or 3 times a year. And the rest of the time, they are all meeting either electronically, communicating with Slack, using the NSSpain task manager to actually schedule work between themselves. And they also don't use laptops. They're all using iPads to be able to move around and work. So it was a fantastic presentation of what the future can be like. Tobias's was even more incredible. Yours was a great presentation. His was unbelievable. He had his camera live pointing at him, and he was basically using the Face ID technology and the APIs that have been opened up with Face ID to do imaging processing of all of what he was doing. So you can see down here, there's a sort of a grid of him waving his hands and the sample snippet behind. And then further into the development delivery of the presentation, you get into his using color and his shading and his detecting depth and so on. His phone tends to run hot, and as you can see, there's a yellow amber sign on the top right-hand side saying the phone will, and of course then it crashed. But he did a restart. Now, one of the latest things that they've added to this Face ID kit processing is the laser eyes, if you look in the corner there. So it actually detects where you're looking, and it can detect which spot in space you're looking at. And when I saw that, I thought, this is incredible. It knows that I'm looking at that. It now knows that I'm looking at that. And you can start to use that in an AR environment or any other application environment you've got. Just incredible. And the keynote speech, you might have noticed, was about Google's Flutter. And I saw in the GDG thing that's coming, a discussion about Flutter. You really should take a look at it. They're trying to do one of these things, build one UI once and deploy it both to iOS and to Android. And the rumor is it's imminent for release. So which was the best conference? Oh, I skipped a slide. No, I did. Yeah, so the best example I can think of for Tobias's work is if you think of a radiologist, sort of looking at different parts of the X-ray, the system being able to track where they're looking, and they're dictating their results as they're doing that. That's the kind of app that I think this really could work in. You could use it for coaching and training, or just as a consultative learning process. What was the best conference? Well, I've been to 3 this year. I went to the ALT conference in San Jose, NSSpain, and to Mobiconf. Mobiconf was the most professional next to an Apple presentation conference, but I would say NSSpain was my favorite. And I'll go back there next year, not for the wine or anything like that, but just for the event. Very well, nicely done. What are my recommendations? They're really tips for myself. Take my GoPro, which is running right now, and see whether I can better capture things like the guys from Uber before they get censored. Thank you very much for listening to me. I'll be around to the end for any questions. And there's somebody says something about links, and there's the set of links. The videos from NSSpain, all the years, several years back. The presentations from NSSpain, some pointers for some of the presentations from Mobiconf, but the videos haven't been released yet. How did I go? Time for questions or not?
Yes.
Yep.
Any questions for Ed? Yeah.
So I watched that Uber talk recently about their new architecture, and it was fascinating.
Yes.
But I'm wondering exactly what got cut out, because I guess the video was like 20 to 30 minutes long. Was their talk like
their presentation was an hour long.
Right. So can you enlighten us as to what was missing?
No,
Okay.
that's why I say, yeah, next time I'm taking the GoPro and I'm recording everything myself.
Right, cool.
And I don't know whether it's NFC enabled. Maybe we can do your test.
Hi.
Hi.
You said something about procedural programming. Obviously, all of us are stuck in the procedural programming paradigm. But what are your thoughts on the not procedural programming? Things like
I'm finding it very hard.
Data programming, register programming, and even Forth and Kona, right, which have dual-purpose instructions.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you because of the motorbike.
So, Forth and Kona, there are 2 languages that have dual-purpose, like quantum languages, but they work on normal CPUs.
No, I'm not that advanced. I really walked away from professional programming in 1979, and hence the pictures of all those antique machines. And then I had done prototyping, and I'd sort of prototype something with a scripting language and then say to one of my developers, this is what I've got to sign off from my client, go build it for me. And I'd do the prototype in a weekend, and they would take 2 months to build the thing robustly. I'm going through a very steep learning curve personally, which is why I went and did a deep dive into these conferences to try and understand all of the new environment that you guys are all very familiar with. And then one of the reasons I concentrated on the UX stream at Mobiconf is I have a client who's got an app at the moment that people are building for him, and I'm consulting with him about the design aspects, pricing aspects, and that kind of thing. Another question, perhaps? No? Great. On with the show. Thank you.